Out of detention tonight, the emotional reunion for a pregnant mother and her fight to stay with her family in the U.S.
When you're hiring a police chief, a lot of candidates, especially top candidates, will have other opportunities. And if you are a very time-consuming and very involved process, then some of the top candidates may withdraw or not consider putting in their applications.
Searching for the next top cop of San Diego. The debate over what's the best way to go about it.
The oceanic environment is the perfect domain for autonomy.
No captains needed for these vessels, the technology that lets boats operate without human crews. KPBS Evening Edition starts right now. Good evening and thanks for joining us. I'm Ebony Monet. San Diego takes on its growing homeless problem. Today, Mayor Kevin Faulconer announced plans for 3 new temporary shelters. KPBS Metro reporter Andrew Bowen has more.
The mayor made his announcement at a press conference Wednesday morning in the East Village, where the largest share of the city's homeless live. 2 of the sites slated for industrial tent shelters are in the East Village. One is in the Midway District. The mayor says the tents will have at least 100 beds, plus restrooms, showers, meals, and security. At least one should be up and running by December. The tents are not meant to be a permanent solution.
This is not a sprint. This is a marathon. And today is another step, but a very big and important step in the right direction.
Faulconer doesn't yet have details on how much the plan will cost or where the funding will come from, but
we wanted to make this announcement as soon as it came together because this is a difficult time for our community. People on the streets who want help are suffering, and they need to know that there is a light at the end of the tunnel.
San Diego's homeless population has been plagued by an outbreak of hepatitis A, and officials have begun bleaching streets and sidewalks to sanitize downtown. The tent announcement came less than 24 hours after county health officials said the outbreak had killed a 16th person. Andrew Bowen, KPBS News.
San Diego leaders took more steps to cut through the red tape to get people off the streets. At a committee meeting today, council members unanimously voted to push for an emergency declaration regarding the lack of shelter space. Officials say people living on the streets without proper facilities is fueling the city's hepatitis A outbreak. Councilman Chris Ward says this emergency declaration could lead to more state funding and reduce barriers to housing homeless. The committee also reviewed other options to address the homeless crisis. A nonprofit called Amicus presented a report on tiny home communities operating in cities like Seattle and Portland. They say San Diego residents are more likely to accept tiny home communities than tent cities in their neighborhoods. New numbers show Californians live in poverty at more than any other state. Data released Tuesday from the U.S. Census Bureau shows 20% of Californians live below the supplemental poverty measure from 2014 to 2016. This measure takes into account the cost of living, government assistance programs. State experts say the state's high housing costs are fueling these numbers.
We've seen housing costs increase faster than most people's earnings in recent years, and so a lot of families are becoming increasingly squeezed. Over half of renters in our state are housing cost burdened, meaning they spend over 30% of their income on rent.
Lawmakers are expected to vote on a package of housing bills before the legislative session comes to an end on Friday. A training accident left 15 Marines injured at Camp Pendleton, 3 in critical condition. It happened today when an amphibious landing vehicle caught fire. A spokesman for the U.S. Marine Corps says 5 of the Marines are in serious condition. Emergency crews transported the injured Marines to a number of hospitals, from UC San Diego to UC Irvine. Marines are investigating what caused the accident. A pregnant mother is free tonight after more than a month in an immigration detention facility. Maria Solis Heso was reunited with her 3 daughters after authorities released her from an Otay Mesa Immigration Detention Center last night. She was detained in August when she was walking to work. KPBS Frontiers reporter Jean Guerrero has more on the reunion with her family.
Maria Solis Heso first spoke to KPBS last month from inside detention. She said she was experiencing severe cramping and that a doctor at the facility told her she could lose her baby.
So hearing those words from the doctor, I am scared of having a miscarriage and for them to not do anything.
After more than a month of detention, Solis was released late last night and was reunited with her children in North County. Solis was let out on an order of supervision so she can fight her immigration case from home. The decision came after the ACLU of San Diego asked officials to release Solis, citing health concerns. Her sister, Isabel, picked her up and described Solis' reunion with her 3 daughters.
They opened the door. The middle one saw my sister, and she couldn't even move. She just said, "Mommy," and then the oldest came out. It was a miracle. It was a miracle. It was so emotional.
Immigration and Customs Enforcement declined to comment on her release. Jean Guerrero, KPBS News.
The state legislature has voted to let K-12 students who returned to the U.S. after leaving the country when their parents were deported to also return to school. The bill was authored and it says hundreds of thousands of U.S. citizen children leave with their deported parents. The bill would also apply to children whose parents brought them to the country illegally. It would also entitle schools to receive state funding for these students. The Senate gave the measure a final approval today with support from Democrats and a handful of Republicans. It now moves to Governor Brown's desk. San Diego is officially about to launch the hunt for a new police chief, and there's disagreement over the best approach to do that. The mayor's office has proposed one method, while community groups suggest another. KPBS City Heights reporter Taryn Minto examines both.
On one side of the debate, the local American Civil Liberties Union and 8 other community groups. They want a series of open forums and a panel that includes community members to interview candidates. The ACLU's Christy Hill says their plan prioritizes transparency and public involvement.
Having the community's voice represented beyond just community forums, which is important. But to have them actually have a voice in selecting and identifying the next police chief is more important, but is also important.
The city of San Diego wants a slightly different approach. Its timeline also calls for public forums, but the interviewers who may recommend a final candidate won't be identified. City spokeswoman Katie Keach previously told KPBS Midday Edition this was to protect the integrity of the process.
Having an somewhat confidential interview process allows the focus to be on the evaluation of candidates and not on the potential compromisation of interviewers. What we have understood from our research with other cities that have gone through this is that there may be attempts of lobbying potential people who are on the committee.
The panel is the point of contention. The city's timeline, which it does say is subject to change, currently calls for a closed panel, and the coalition's method calls for an open committee. Hill says the coalition's proposal pulled information from chief searches in 11 other cities across the country, from Seattle to Chicago. That included Dallas, which allowed community members to interview finalists, and Phoenix, where a group of identified community members helped interview semifinalists, and then the public interacted with finalists in an open setting.
One of the bigger takeaways from that process was that there wasn't a one-size-fits-all approach. And so, in looking at what Seattle did and Chicago and Tucson, we were able to identify, given what we know is going on in San Diego and what the challenges facing our next police chief will be, what, would be components of a good process here.
The city of San Diego said it researched 9 cities, including 7 in California. Spokeswoman Keach declined an on-camera interview, but said in an email that San Diego's search focused on a diverse selection of cities of a similar size. That included Sacramento, which recently hired the department's first African-American police chief, and West Covina, California, where residents wanted a chief that's familiar with the department, and they got one. But researcher Nelson Lim with the public policy nonprofit RAND Corporation says duplicating processes in other cities may not yield the best result for San Diego because a universal best practice may not actually exist.
One of the reasons is that what is best depends on the context, right? So there could be a study that can tell you what is the common practices for hiring a police chief, but the best practice is very localized, very contextualized.
Lim has worked with government agencies on hiring practices, including San Diego Police Department. He says he's not entirely convinced by the city of San Diego's proposal for a confidential panel.
You want to pick individuals that are morally strong with high integrity, and those individuals are, I have a hard time imagining that easily will be persuaded by lobbying.
He says the city could set clear rules that evidence of candidate lobbying would result in disqualification. On the other hand, he's also not on board with the coalition's 15-member panel.
The group is too big to gain consensus. When you're hiring a police chief, a lot of candidates, especially top candidates, will have other opportunities. And if you are a very time-consuming and very involved process, then some of the top candidates may withdraw or not consider putting in their applications.
But he does suggest the panelists be publicly known.
Do you see or know of any reason that you can think of that it would be better to keep that final interview panel secret until or confidential until after candidates are proposed?
I cannot think of any one good reason to do that.
The city of San Diego is currently seeking requests for proposal from a recruitment firm to assist in its search. Taryn Mento, KPBS News.
It may not have the same name recognition as the San Andreas Fault, but San Diego's Rose Canyon Fault is still capable of inflicting heavy damage. That's according to a new assessment by a local research group who spoke with KPBS science reporter David Wagner.
Rose Canyon Fault cuts through La Jolla into downtown San Diego, running beneath heavily populated areas with lots of older buildings. The local chapter of the Earthquake Engineering Research Institute, or EERI, is studying what the effects of a magnitude 6.9 earthquake would be along this fault line. The researchers say it could lead to about $60 billion of damage and anywhere from 100 to 2,000 deaths. EERI President Jorge Meneses says both sides of the border need to prepare.
Whatever happens to San Diego is going to affect Tijuana, and whatever happens to Tijuana is going to affect San Diego. So there should be a coordinated response after the earthquake.
Meneses says an earthquake of this magnitude could happen on the Rose Canyon Fault every few hundred years. David Wagner, KPBS News.
California lawmakers are running out of time to decide whether the state's energy diet will be greener in 2045. KPBS reporter Eric Anderson has details.
Renewable energy advocates are pushing for the measure, which could significantly change the kind of energy consumed in the state. Now, Senate Bill 100 commits California to using 100% renewable or carbon neutral energy. A national nonprofit sustainability group is among those pushing for the change. Cirrus Policy Director Kirsten James says California is the right place to try it.
You know, it is an ambitious goal. Definitely not going to argue with that. But California has proven that it can meet and exceed ambitious goals and at the same time continue economic growth.
The fossil fuel industry opposes the bill, as do two of the state's investor-owned utilities. A Pacific Gas and Electric spokeswoman says she's worried the push for carbon-neutral energy will be expensive and force her customers to pay higher bills. Eric Anderson, KPBS News.
Florida's orange crop took a devastating blow from Hurricane Irma. The storm left trees standing in as much as 3 feet of water. Some groves lost nearly all of their fruit. The orange harvest normally starts in November, with most of the fruit used for orange juice. Farmers are still assessing the damage to other Florida crops like vegetables and sugarcane. The American Red Cross needs help, with thousands of people still displaced from Hurricanes Harvey and Irma. The aid organization says they need more volunteer shelter and caseworkers who are ready to deploy to Florida and Texas. KPBS's Matt Hoffman has more.
It's just shocking. It just breaks your heart. And I have to tell you, I have broken down in tears a few times. It's just hard to see.
When the American Red Cross asked volunteer Marie Sablon to join Harvey relief efforts, she was ready.
When I got the phone call, I knew I had to go. And my husband and my family know that. That's like my calling, I would say.
A Chula Vista resident, Sablon deployed as a shelter worker in the small town of Sour Lake, about an hour and a half northeast of Houston.
These are families who have been displaced by floodwaters. They've said that they've had 4 feet of water, 7 feet of water in their homes, up to 10 feet even. Some just completely washed away. I did not see any suitcases, and I'm telling you, when they say you need to vacate, you better do it. So the families in our shelter basically left their home with what they were wearing.
At a special Red Cross training in Kearney Mesa, Sablon met with nearly 100 volunteers interested in helping those displaced. And now, after 4 hours of training, these volunteers are ready to deploy to Houston or Florida within just 48 hours.
We have to be flexible, and we encourage our volunteers to have that flexibility. Of course, be ready to deploy. But I suspect that it will be in the next 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks. This response is going to take a long time.
If tapped, volunteers would be deployed for at least 2 weeks, something that isn't easy for their families.
They'll text me and they'll go, we just watched the news and so-and-so is getting flooded, and where are you? Are you safe?
The Red Cross says there are currently 33 volunteers from San Diego and Texas and 31 in Florida. Matt Hoffman, KPBS News.
With sunny skies and warm temperatures, summer isn't over just yet in San Diego. But Erin Calandra tells us about a cooling trend in tonight's forecast.
Well, those showers and thunderstorms in the deserts and also the mountains are starting to decrease. We're still seeing a couple popping up here and there, but as the week goes on, they're really going to be kind of going away. And by the weekend, it should be pretty dry across those deserts and mountains. So here we are taking a bigger look. Look at San Francisco. We have a low pressure system that's spinning here right along the coast, and that's bringing some thunderstorms to San Francisco. That is slightly unusual around here. Taking a look at our temperatures, 67 degrees. That's much closer to normal than we have been lately. Increasing clouds. We have this cool air coming in off the coast, so that's going to make our clouds stick around just a bit longer, maybe a bit thicker as well. Taking a look at some temperatures for tonight. Oceanside 62, Poway 62, San Diego coming in at 67 degrees, Chula Vista 65, Mount Laguna 50 degrees, and Borrego Springs in the mid-60s. Tomorrow again, when you wake up, we're going to have some clouds right along the coast, and they might stick around for just a little bit longer than we're used to, but they will go away, and we will have some plenty of sunshine. So San Diego 75 and Oceanside, Poway 77 degrees, Borrego Springs, look at that, 87 degrees. It has been well into the 100s for so long. That is certainly a nice break. Alpine 73 degrees for the high temperature. So we have that cooler air coming in off the coast, as I mentioned, so it's going to be a lot more comfortable. Temperatures back to where they should be. Also some pop-up thunderstorms here in the Four Corners. We could even see some mist in the morning here on Friday, even into Saturday. Just some light mist here along the coast. Temperatures in the low 70s all week long with some sunshine. And then inland, some mist in the morning again Thursday, Friday morning, turning sunny on Saturday. Temperatures reaching 80 degrees. And then in the mountains, it's cool, 66 degrees Thursday through Saturday. Our lows even in the 40s on Friday. So it's going to be cooler but sunny. A nice break there. And in the deserts, We are talking double digits all week long. So cooler, but more comfortable for sure, with plenty of sunshine. For KPBS News, I'm Erin Calandra.
A California judge has ordered Republican Congressman Darrell Issa to pay his congressional opponent at least $45,000. According to KPBS host Deb Welsh, this follows Issa's failed defamation lawsuit.
The estimated $45,000 will cover the legal expenses incurred by Democrat Doug Applegate as a result of Issa's lawsuit. Issa narrowly defeated Applegate in last year's election. He then sued his opponent over attack ads that Issa claimed hurt his reputation. In March, a judge said Issa had failed to prove his case. The judge sided with Applegate, who argued that he was exercising his free speech rights with the commercials. The TV ads aired in San Diego and Orange counties just prior to last year's election. Chuck Bell, an attorney for Issa, says they disagree with some of the judge's assessments, and the decision is being appealed. Issa defeated Applegate last year by 1,621 votes. It was the closest congressional race in the country. Deb Welsh, KPBS News.
California lawmakers are once again trying to expand job-protected family leave to new mothers and fathers who work in small businesses. Current law only allows up to 12 weeks off for workers at companies with 50 or more employees. The new bill expands the program to companies with at least 20 employees. The California Chamber of Commerce calls the bill a job killer because it would increase cost and burdens for small businesses. The bill passed both chambers and now heads to the governor's desk. Officials say San Diego has the highest teen suicide rate in the state. And now Rady Children's Hospital is getting a $5 million grant to help fight the problem. The money will be used to open the region's first psychiatric emergency department for children. The hospital says mental health issues affect 190,000 children in San Diego alone. A new bike sharing program is launching in Imperial Beach. LimeBike is what's called a dockless bike sharing, meaning you can pick it up and ride and park the bike anywhere. That's legal. Mayor Serge Dedina says Imperial Beach is working hard to improve car-free mobility for its residents.
So we took the opportunity to partner with LimeBikes as an opportunity to see how we could really improve access to our open spaces in our city among all our residents and visitors alike.
LimeBike charges $1 for every 30 minutes of ride time. Students get half a cent off, and members of the Navy can use it for free through October. As we wait for self-driving cars on the road, self-driving boats may be just around the pier. AP reporter Mike Householder has more on firms designing boats without crews.
Automakers envision a future full of driverless cars on the road. What could likely happen sooner, however, is a fleet of captainless boats on the water.
We think autonomous technology will be, for the maritime space, will be adopted faster than autonomous technology on road.
Okay, Sod, we're in full autonomy now.
Startup company C Machines Robotics tested a driverless workboat in Boston Harbor this summer. The boat still needs human oversight. One person keeping watch from a nearby dock and another at the helm.
I am here to make sure that we avoid any possible collisions that might happen, that we're not caught by the autonomy system.
C Machines Robotics CEO plans to sell the autonomous control system he's been testing to companies doing oil spill cleanups and other difficult work on the water.
The oceanic environment is the perfect domain for autonomy.
Within the next 5 years, some of the world's biggest maritime firms have committed to designing tugboats, passenger ferries, and cargo vessels that won't need any captains or crews, at least not on board. Engineering firm Kongsberg Maritime is working on a zero-emission container ship that would deliver products to 3 Norwegian ports rather than having them trucked there. The pilot ship is scheduled to launch next year and be fully autonomous by 2020. University of Michigan engineering professor Matthew Johnson Robertson says recent deadly Navy collisions underscore the need for technology to make the water safer.
It shows you that it is still a really critical thing to get right, that you can't make mistakes. And what we want to do is create technology that makes it safer than what we're doing right now. And as soon as it is safer and cheaper, I think you're going to see that happening. And so I think the companies that are working on it are figuring out how to make this a business reality, but the technology is mostly here.
While challenges remain, including winning public trust and protecting against remote hacking, the maritime industry is moving full speed ahead for a self-driving boat future and fewer hands on deck. Mike Householder, Associated Press.
I'm John Yang. On the next news hour, the fiery end of the spacecraft that's taught us nearly everything we know about Saturn. That's Wednesday on the PBS NewsHour.
In the summer of 2028, an international spotlight will shine on Los Angeles. Today, the city was officially awarded the Summer Games. The Coliseum was lit in celebration ahead of today's big announcement. LA hasn't hosted the Games since 1984. Olympic gold medalist and former UCLA gymnast Jordan Weber thinks Los Angeles is an ideal location.
The weather is perfect almost always. There's such a sports culture and a fitness culture here that I think makes it a really great place for sports events and in the Olympic Games. You know, there's so many different parts of the city. There's the beach side of the city, there's the Hollywood side of the city, so there's so many different things that people can come here and visit and see, and then to bring the Olympics here is just only going to make that better.
The Summer Olympics hasn't been held in the U.S. since 1996 when it was held in Atlanta. The Olympic Committee also announced today Paris will host the 2024 Summer Games. Now, here's a look at what we're working on for tomorrow in the KPBS newsroom. On Morning Edition, a week of cinema classics at Landmark's Kin Cinema, the lineup that includes Robert Mitchum and Humphrey Bogart. And on Midday Edition, looking ahead to Ken Burns' documentary, The Vietnam War, airing Sunday on KPBS, the complicated history connecting veterans and witnesses. That's tomorrow on KPBS Radio. You can find tonight's stories on our website, kpbs.org/evening edition. Thanks for joining us. Have a great night.